Hello everyone, it's Ty Carter here, and this is a bit of a different video compared to what I normally do. This time around I'm going to be mostly talking about the rises and drops from underuse. Well, it's mostly drops for the most part, and this is another major shift for this month going into May. At the time of recording this, it is like Sunday, so exactly 1 week has passed since these drops have arrived, more or less. And we've had like a decent sample size to work off of, so I could kind of talk about how they're faring. The underused ladder tournament is also ongoing right now, so, and I am playing in that right now, so like I can at least talk about it a little bit more with a informed perspective, if you want to call it that. And let's just get right into this. So first things first, 4.52% rise drop cutoff. Let's just take a look at this. Like what was danger? Iron Treads was some Pokemon that people actually thought was gonna drop into underuse, but surprisingly it barely manages to stay above. It should definitely drop next month though, with that being said. Greninja like barely missed the cutoff for OU, but we'll get into that soon. Breloom was another one that people were surprised didn't drop, because it seemed like it was starting to lose luster, but you know, ladder's ladder, right? And now let's talk about the actual drops. Arbor Oak, this is a returning poke. This was actually around during the start of UU's lifespan, and then OU was spamming that one really broken psychic terrain team with like triple focus sash or whatever back when Shen Pao was in the meta and was not banned yet. And it rose up there and then it somehow stayed there for a little bit. But now UU has it back again. I'm just gonna I'll talk about like what they do briefly. The other drop is Cyclozar. Cyclozar is a Pokemon that actually got freed because of the Shedtail ban. And we also have Greninja, which was a Rain staple. So Rain has like another new toy to play with, although Greninja's good on its own too. The Protean nerf really hurt it, I guess, more or less, but and like unlike Cinderace, like it can't really buffer its Protean activation since it has a dual typing, so this means that it will always activate Protean, and Protean only works once, and you lose out on your stab, all that stuff. And we also have Samrat. Samrat was released like this month and nobody was really using it, so of course it drops. It's probably going to drop down to RU next month too. Typhlosion, kind of in the same boat as Samrat, it was released as like one of those Terra Raid Pokemon, because they've been releasing the starters slowly. Last month we got Decidueye, this month we're getting 2 more starters. As for rises, Kilowattrel and Floatzel comes back to UU. This is because Pelipper came back last month, so we're getting Rain back again. Slowbro also rose from rarely used up to underused. Slowbro is like the Quackle answer. Yes, Quackle is in the tier, and that thing is very stupid. And to be frank, I think it should be banned, but you know, that's not the point of this video. I'm just here to talk about like, you know, what's risen and whatnot. As for stuff that dropped off, Grafaiai dropped off from UU to RU. I think it's probably because like of stuff like Jugulis or whatever. I don't know, I'm a little surprised because Grafaiai seemed perfectly fine. Although part of it might be because like a lot of those Grafaiai teams that people use were like starting to fall out of favor. And then Hawlucha and Poltegeist, that was because Psychic Terrain was kind of at an all-time low in viability, but with Arbor Oak coming back, Hawlucha and Poltegeist should probably rise back up as well, because those are basically staples. Iron Thorns, yeah, this thing should have dropped long ago, but you know, with that being said, oh yeah, also funny thing, Hawlucha and Poltegeist actually got quick ban from RU like the moment it dropped. Like, I don't know, it was like a couple hours after the drops were announced. But with that being said, let's just talk about this. To talk about this, I'm gonna pull up the viability rankings real quick. Right. So here's the UU viability rankings. Yada yada. Right. The first one that I want to talk about is Arbor Oak. We're gonna talk about these alphabetically. Armor Rouge or Armor Rogue. I don't know how it's pronounced. That's besides the point. Armor Oak basically, like a lot of these pokes, it can completely stomp them out under psychic terrain if it can get its boosts and whatnot. And like, yeah, it can threaten basically all these pokes in one way or another. Like even Tyranitar, Armor Oak could run like a Aura Sphere or Focus Blast, whatever, right? And the thing is, like, if it has the right coverage, it can beat you. For example, like Gastrodon and Quagsire, like, normally it would wall Armor Oak, but the thing is that Armor Oak has Energy Balls, so, like, that could completely ruin their day. But also, there's, like, Terra. Terra just completely jumbles all of these up. The pokes that Armor Oak is going to struggle against the most are probably pokes like Special Salamence or Sandy Shocks. Arnjuglus is also another major one. Noivern, but it also can feast on like weak U-turners, such as like Talonflame, for example. If it like U-turns onto a Armor Oak, and then you proc weak armor, and then all of a sudden now you're like super fast at like ×2 speed. Although like I will note that for Armor Oak, it does want to run Timid Nature because that's a speed benchmark that lets you be faster than Booster Energy Arnjuglus and also Choice Scarf Gengar. So those are major benchmarks. Like if you're, but so overall, I think like it has good matchups, but like the conditions it needs to get those good matchups are pretty spotty, to say the least. And even stuff like Mimikyu can just completely ruin its day, especially the Endure Weakness Policy sets. Mimikyu like Disguise can just completely ruin its day if you like preserve it properly and all that jazz. And then like it has a terrible matchup against Rain, obviously, although like Psychic Terrain teams in general just don't do very well against Rain as a whole, in my opinion. Right, and then the other poke, Cyclozar. Cyclozar is more of a utility Pokemon, to say the least, although I will note that it does have a hard time against Wo-Chien, like getting the rapid spin off because it commonly runs Terra Ghost. It can U-turn on it if like the Wo-Chien hasn't used Terra or if Terra has already gotten used. If you do run Taunt, that can also give it trouble. Inkaton, like you could knock off, get rid of its lefties and whatnot, and you can pivot out. Talonflame, you can also kind of pivot out of. It's like they don't really do a whole lot to each other. Gengar can be annoying. Although like Cyclozar means that Gengar can't just mindlessly click Shadow Ball because of its partial normal typing, but man, it cannot take a Sludge Bomb unless you're like running the Assault Vest Cyclozar, which is also valid, by the way. It's gonna have a hard time getting spins off against stuff like Tyranitar, and then Quagsire, if it poisons it, it's like, yeah, it's on a timer, but like you can kind of reach in and out. And like Gastrodon can like threaten it with like Sludge Bomb or Ice Beam. If it gets like the Poison Fish from Sludge Bomb, then like it's kind of in a really bad spot. Oh yeah, Noivern is also a Pokemon that's probably gonna see some rise again because it's actually faster than Greninja and Cyclozar, both very fast pokes in the tier. Mimikyu, it's like yeah, it can spin block too, but then like Cyclozar is kind of just forced to dip out. Alomomola, like you could knock it off and then but the thing is, like, some Alomomolas I think actually do run play rough. So like Alomomola is also kind of annoying for the Cyclozar. Decidueye just I think defensive Decidueye just usually blanks on most Cyclozar sets unless like they're not running Spadef investment and they get caught by surprise overheat or whatever. But that's besides the point. Right, like for most part, it's okay. Okay, Cyclozar is just more of a utility poke. And like it can kind of just regen in and out and just annoy the team. Oh, Scizor is also kind of bad for Cyclozar to some degree. But with that being said though, let's talk about Greninja real quick. Greninja, great matchups against Salamence and Sandy Shocks. Even Booster, Sandy Shocks has to respect the possibility of Water Shuriken, which is a move that Greninja does have, and like it's not an uncommon sight if it's say like Specs Water Shuriken. Of course, there's also like Choice Scarf Greninja, which is actually valid for Noivern specifically. So, and Gastrodon, Grass Knot can do numbers on this thing. Gengar just like gets out offensed more often than not. Palmot can Lock Punch it, and like Water Shuriken doesn't even do a whole lot because Water Shuriken has like terrible base power. It's like base 15 per hit, which like for a multi-hit move is like especially bad. Scizor can kind of U-turn on it, which is annoying, but like with Protean, it's like you can kind of bypass your U-turn weakness a little bit, and Greninja can do lots of damage to Scizor. And it does resist Ball Punch, but like Greninja's very frail. Talonflame, it has a pretty solid matchup. If it's Water Shuriken, it's pretty good because you could put a lot of pressure on Talonflame, put it real low, and it's gonna have a hard time like doing its job of removing hazards for defog and whatnot. And if it's Scarf, it's like you could completely shred this thing with like a Scarf Hydro Pump or like Surf, depending on what you want to do. But Tinkaton actually has a pretty good matchup into most Greninja sets besides Specs Terra Water Greninja with like a Hydro Pump. It can't really eat those too well. And Wo-Chien, that can also be threatened too. Hippowdon, yeah, like that thing just gets completely gooped. Regular can't take hits too well from that thing. Like yeah, like Greninja has like actually pretty good matchups against like most of these Pokemon, or at least neutral to good matchups. Quaquaval just usually walls most of Greninja's moves, although some Greninjas might run extra sensory, but just for Quaquaval, if it might be warranted because of how prominent Quaquaval is. But you know, the Protean nerf can make it pretty difficult because like Mono Psychic is terrible type to be Protean locked into. And then like you have Tyranitar, Greninja can just kind of U-turn on it, all that stuff. Oh, and like Greninja also has spikes and toxic spikes too, so there's also that. Alomomola, yeah, like it's not taking a Specs Dark Pulse too well. Grafai, again, like, with Grafai can't Crankster Parting Shot on Greninja, which is actually pretty important. So like it will just like be forced to eat up those hits, because like since like priority Prankster is priority more or less, right? And like Greninja doesn't change its typing until it commits to the move, so keep an eye out for that. Maushold, again, it does have priority. Like you can use something like Specs Water Shuriken to try and like as a priority move to kind of bypass a tidied up boosted mouse hold. But like Greninja naturally outspeeds it, and like mouse hold can't really come in on it. Mimikyu Water Shuriken can kind of help it out in bypassing disguise and breaking the disguise, and then like, you know, multi-hit moves, all that good stuff. Noivern, most Greninja sets are not doing too hot against this because Noivern outspeeds it by 1 point. What is worth noting, yeah, so like there's actually some merit to running Scarf because of Noivern. Helper, again, like Dark Pulse does a lot to it. And Screamtail should wall most the Greninja sets, although some Greninjas, if you're, say, running like a mixed attacker, you could do like Gunk Shot to catch Screamtail by surprise. Specs, again, can like break it, but a lot of people aren't using Specs right now because it's kind of hard to fit in. I mean, some people are, but it's like not everybody's using it. That's their wing first impression, so Greninja has to be careful about that. And it's still a great matchup into this. Decidueye, again, great matchup with like Dark Pulse. Donphan, also great matchup, more or less. Loto is like, yeah, Greninja can't really do too well. Yeah, like against most of these Pokemon, Greninja has a pretty solid matchup against most of these, mostly because of its wide like coverage pool that it has and whatnot. And then Samrat doesn't really do too great against most of these because it's like slow as balls, although it does have Mega Horn, so I guess it might have a niche against like Wo-Chien or something. I don't know. Like I've seen like maybe 1 or 2 people try to mixed results. And Typhlosion, especially in a tier with multiple sand setters, like you have Tyranitar, you have Hippowdon, Typhlosion's just gonna have a hard time succeeding, not to mention stuff like Gastrodon being very prominent and whatnot. And also stuff like Sandy Shocks that just outspeed it. If it's the booster set, which like a lot of Sandy Shocks have been running, then like Typhlosion's kind of in trouble. And not to mention like Salaman's just resisting it. Right, so let me just talk about maybe some of the sets they could be running real quick. Alright, so Greninja. And Greninja is like, for example, you do something like a Focus Sash, a Suicide Lead with like, you know, Water Shuriken, Ice Beam, Dark Pulse. You could also do a Toxic Spikes instead of Spikes and whatnot. Like, this is like, I've used this a few times. It's like pretty good into Psychic Terrain HO because like you could kind of get you could sometimes get 2 for 1, but it's good for like kind of holding off stuff like Hawlucha after it like tries to CC your ass and then you just completely goop it right back. Although like most, it doesn't do too high against Poltegeist because of the fact that Poltegeist usually Terra fights if Psychic Terrain is still up, so there's that. And then like being able to set spikes, that's like all good stuff. They can come in on Indeedee too. That's also important. And then there's the infamous Choice Spec set. You might see this on Rain Team. Instead of Hydro Pump, you could also do a Surf. A lot of Greninjas are running like Terra Water, although Terra Dark is an option too, I guess, but you know, you do something like this. So instead of Ice Beam, you can also do like Grass Knot. I want our Extra Sentry, you know, pick your coverage, right? Or, oh, sorry, not Ice Punch, that's silly. Ice Beam. Beam, you do all attacking. You could also, they run like spikes on this. Obviously, there's also like Expert Belt. You also do something like a Slap On. They Surf instead of Water Shuriken or Dark Pulse. Like, you have a lot of freedom in terms of like the movesets you can run. Oh yeah, it also has Switcheroo too. Like, so you also do like, or sorry, not Sword Stance. Oh my god, that'd be hilarious. But yeah, Physical Grunt would be hilarious. I guess it could work if you're doing like Sword Stance, Gunk Shot, whatever. But, yeah, like, there's a lot of freedom in terms of what you can do. Like, oh, if you wanna... in the world? Yeah, like, there's a lot of options in terms of, like, what you could do with Greninja and whatnot. And then there's also, like, heavy-duty boots, which some people have tried out. Yeah, like, there's, like, so many moves you can run. Like, these aren't, like, the most optimal moves. It's kind of, like, whatever. Yeah, right. Greninja, lots of options. Okay, and then Arbor Oak. Arbor Oak's pretty linear. You can always do the Udon Girl special of just slapping choice specs onto any Pokemon with a remotely high special attack stat. And it works magic, although Udon Girl spreads also don't run like max speed or whatever. She runs like the weirdest spreads ever, but hey, that's not the main point here. You could do like 4 attacks, like Armor Cannon, Side Shot, Energy Ball, Focus Blast, yada, right? So yeah, this one's pretty straightforward. You use it as a breaker, you punch holes. Not a lot of things can switch into specs Armor Cannon. Yeah, you could even do like Terra Fire just for the hell of it, right? And of course, the infamous like Endure Weakness Policy, Store Power. Yeah, it doesn't have to be Focus Blast, you can also do Armor Cannon. Cannon too, that's an option as well, if you're like not worried about your Tyranitar matchup for whatever reason. Or like if you don't see a Tyranitar on the other side of the screen, you're gonna be able to get like completely goob people. Yeah, this is like demonic set. Store Power just ends games. Of course, there's also heavy duty boots. This is a set I've used a couple times. I like running Timid, like you're running Arbor Oak on more quote-unquote regular teams. Like 273, you want to run that because it's an important speed benchmark where you, as I talked about before, I think, you outspeed Choice Scarf Gengar and a booster energy plus speed Iron Jugulus at 273, which you cannot do at Modest, and like you get Calm-Mind up. When you're fighting against this thing, it's like, yeah, if you see this thing on the other side of the screen, it's like you cannot like mindlessly U-turn or just knock stuff, because like if you proc at weak armor, okay, the only poke that might be able to get away with it is like Wo-Chien, which might be asking a lot, but Arbor Oak don't even want to come in on that freely. Then you do something like Terra Grass for like a stab energy ball. Right. Oh yeah, this set, I've like 6-0 stall with this before. It's like really stupid. So, but yeah, like Arbor Oak, again, you have options. It's, yeah, oh yeah, and there's also like Expanding Force too if you're running out Psychic Terrain teams. That's an option too if you don't want to do Store Power. Or you just want completely goop people with like base, like, I think it's like base 120. Right, and also, let's just talk about Cyclozor here. Cyclozor is basically gonna be a staple on like almost every goddamn team ever. Does so much for you in one slot. It U-turn knocks off, and also like removes hazards. Although like, with that being said, like Cyclozor does have a lot of burden to like remove the hazards and whatnot. Like, it's very easy to put a lot of pressure on this thing if you're not careful, because like it's fast, but it's not like the fastest thing ever. Assault Vest, this is like, this gives it a little bit of bulk and it improves its Gengar matchup a little bit. Like it would come in on a Sludge Bomb and whatnot. Draco Meteor, like if you want to just goop Ace Elements completely, that's why you might run it. Yeah, like, and the thing with Cyclozar, like I talked about before, like look at this, it gets like the most random moves ever, like Ice Spinner, okay, I guess it's a motorcycle, so that makes it, yeah, I guess like Power Whip, Overheat, yeah, like you have Shift Gear if you want to like go that route and be crazy. Yeah, it's like Taunt too. Like yeah, it just has like a ton, it just has like the most random, like useful good moves. Power Whip's like if you just want to surprise a Gastrodon or a Quagsire, like trying to exchange a toxic on you or whatever, you could like do that and catch them off guard. That's an option too. And then like there's heavy duty boots. This is like the more standard set that you might see most people run, max HP and all that stuff. And then I think there's like a variation of this too where it's running like physical attack. I think this is like to punish Arbor Oaks that try to exploit its attempts to rapid spin hazards away and stuff. So there's also that too. Oh, and also like if people are crazy enough, they might do something like, who knows? You know somebody's gonna like fucking try and do like choice specs with like Draco Meteor overheat and all that stuff, but I don't even know how viable that really is. It could be a fun set, but I'm not sure if that's something you might see someone bringing like actual tournament game, but that's not the main point. Right, with Typhlosion and Samrat, they're a lot more linear in terms of what they're running. There is some merit to running Blaze if you're Gardevoir, because people do run Gardevoir for rain against, like, as a rain anti-attack per se, like with Choice Scarf and stuff, and then it could trace Flash Fire, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, what am I gonna do now? Although, like, yeah, it does have the Pure Shower Ball and whatnot, but yeah, so there's that going for Typhlosion. Choice Scarf, pretty cut and dry, revenge kill stuff, with like a powerful, like, base 150 eruption. Choice Specs, again, you're clicking buttons. If you want to, you could do like Terra Fire Specs Eruption, and just completely goop people if you can get it into a game. And then it can also run like a Terra Blast, Terra Grass for like stuff like Gastrodon and Quagsire. Of course, Focus Blast because like if I hit T-Tar really hard. And there's also like heavy duty boots too. Like that's an option too if you want to go that route and like you want a little more leeway. It's like entering in the game and you want to preserve your eruption. I guess if you're gonna make Typhlosion work, I think like Wish support could really go a long way if you like just want to keep spamming eruption and then like get your HP back. So from something like say a Sylveon or Screamtail, whatever. Samrat, like, god yeah, this is like so depressing. This is like very cut and dry. You could even ditch knockoff for like say Liquid if you want. Yeah, like this thing is, I don't really see this thing being viable in UU at the moment, or at least not that viable. CB, if you want to do that, there's also Choice Specs. Like, I don't know, like Earth Blast, Terra Ground, and whatnot. So there's that ongoing. And I'm just gonna go back to viability ranking. Right, so back to viability rankings. As for stuff, like with these new shifts in mind, stuff I could see taking a bit of a hit in terms of viability is probably like Sandy Shock's probably takes a minor bump, like maybe not S rank threat, but still a top tier threat. Palmot's value could also go down a little bit because like this tier is just getting faster and faster now. And like Palmot is kind of in a rough spot. I think it's a little harder to fit on the teams, and then you have stuff like Arbor Oak just chilling around, ready to completely shred it. Scissor's probably still gonna be a threat, although like Arbor Oak being a new check to it is probably going to make Scissor a little bit more manageable. I think the tier's in a bit of a better state now with these new drops. Tinkaton's probably gonna remain roughly where it is, because like it does gain a niche on checking like most Greninja sets. Keyword here being most. One of those sets it doesn't really check that well is like specs, but you compare it with like Wolchan, that's a pretty common partner you might see it with where like Greninja actually think or whatever, right? Hippowdon being an A rank, that was kind of weird, but with Arbor Oak, Greninja in the tier, like it's like, yeah, I can see why it might take a bit of a dip. Iron Justice definitely loses some value, especially with Greninja in the tier now. It's like you really have to run booster, but the thing is like with booster it's like it's a one-time thing, right? So like if you say get roared out by a Hippowdon or whatever, it's like, oh great, so much for that. Right, I think Ashton and Quagsire are probably still gonna do what it does best, even though like it has to fear Evolve from Arbor Oak. But Tyranitar's value definitely keeps going up, like it's been steadily rising. I will say, like at the time of recording this during the UULT, like people have been spamming this one like CB tar team. I think like Highways, Lily, and like Meru have been spamming it, and like they've been doing pretty good with it. And like that team, very strong team. But Tyranitar, like it rises up to kind of like try to keep Arbor Oak from overrunning everyone. Stuff like Mola. Mola is still gonna do what it does. I think Noivern probably rises up from A-, that's just my personal opinion. Mostly because of the speed tier that it possesses, where it is faster than Cyclizar and Greninja, and it can threaten both of them offensively. And it can also U-turn like a Hort matchup before it like say gets gooped by like Draco Meteor or Ice Beam. Screamtail might see a slight dip in value, mostly because like it's gonna have a hard time coming in on Arbor Oak. Actually, no, I take that back. It'll probably still be fine. Slitherwing being like A-, like yeah, it'll probably Greninja is like a new target for it per se, if you want to call it that. With like first impression stuff, being able to bypass Water Shuriken in like a late game situation, that's gonna be very useful. Slowbro, again Greninja, and what's his face? And Arbor Oak, that can be a bit of a nuisance, although like yeah, because like Slowbro can't really switch into Specs Rogue's Armor Cannon very well at all. It takes like over 50% or something. It's like crazy damage. And then like Decidueye, that people have been starting to use Decidueye more and more, with that being said. And let's say like Oricorio, like yeah, like for the most part, Rain might see a slight rise in viability, but I'm not sure how you go fit Greninja in. But I'm sure like Rain teams will find a way to make it work. Although Rain teams have been kind of a mixed bag so far, like in its return back to underused. Even though you have stuff like Quackle. Oh yeah, Quackle is still gonna be like feasting. Arbor Oak is a pretty rough target for it, unless it invests in some bulk to eat like one Aqua Step. But yeah. And Greninja's also gonna have a hard time against Quackle, as I said before. Quackle is probably gonna rise up too, like because Quackle's like it's already good in its own, but also being like a staple on like a pretty dangerous playstyle and psychic terrain offense is also going to help it out too. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed me like just rambling a little bit about like the rises and drops with underuse and whatnot, and I will see you guys next time.